Now we have Didier van Hoye live from Belgium, from his lab. Didier is a fellow MVP and we are actually very close friends. Didier is now a 10-year MVP as far as I know, Didier, right?
That's correct,
and
yes.
Didier is also one of those guys who's doing still a lot of Hyper-V stuff on premises, but also does a bunch of Azure, right, Didier?
Correct. It's a hybrid world. It's a hybrid world.
Hybrid world. So all your relevant links are there. Your great blog, your Twitter handle.
I just lost Carsten's sound. I hope they haven't lost me.
Go, Didier.
Okay. So welcome. So I'm going to talk about SMB over QUIC, and that's a feature you can use on Windows Server 2022, the Azure Edition. This is relevant to Azure Stack HCI because you can either run this in Azure or you can run it on Azure Stack HCI, but for as far as I know today, nowhere else. So let's dive in. So SMB over QUIC. The first thing, of course, you need to do is QUIC. We need to discuss what it is and why it's relevant to you. Well, let's dive in. QUIC is an internet engineering task for standards now. It aims to replace TCP with, initially at least, an internet-oriented UDP solution. And its aim is to improve the performance and be better on bad networks and handle congestion better. So Google started out with this, but now it's really an IETF standard. And QUIC wants to replace TCP/IP, but it also, of course, wants to build on what TCP/IP has, its reliability and the fact that it's used everywhere, right? Its broad applicability, as they say. Now, the nice thing about QUIC, it is always encrypted, as it requires TLS 1.3. So that means requires means it doesn't work without. So unlike HTTP, it is always encrypted. Microsoft actually created MS-QUIC, which is their open source implementation of the standard, and they are building on that one and keep improving on that one. So now you know what it is. What does it aim to achieve? Well, QUIC, as they say, it reduces the connection times over TLS. Well, basically, it's a bit of a lie. It's TLS 1.3 that does that. So they took out the key exchange and the authentication out of the handshake. So it's a lot faster, and they've really cleaned up all the possible ciphers you have to test or compare whether they are compatible. There's only 5 left, and those are the ones that will be secure for the foreseeable future. Now, TCP/IP also has a lot of overhead associated with lots of data transfer. So you will see with video streaming, gaming, that UDP is very popular, and QUIC can use UDP to achieve the same thing, avoid that overhead. Now, better performance in case of a congested network, so in case of data packet loss, even with HTTP2, if you have a connection with multiple streams, if one of the streams has a package that get lost, you will still have to wait for that package to be resent and arrive. So basically all the streams are blocked waiting for that one stream that dropped the packet. So it's not ideal. It's better than it used to be, but it's not ideal. But QUIC can deal with that. QUIC actually doesn't mind if one stream loses a package. So that's a lot better. Also, with QUIC, you can reuse connections. So the server actually sends a session ticket to the client, and you can reuse that instead of creating a new connection. And also for connection migrations, let's say if you switch from your wired to your Wi-Fi network or from your Wi-Fi to your mobile data network, you get a new IP address often, and well, you have reconnection issues because with TCP/IP, new IP address, new connection, you need to reestablish, you will get hiccups. Now, QUIC uses unique identifiers, which means that you can actually send a packet and the connection will resume. So there's no need to actually create a new connection, not even when you switch to a new network and have another IP address. And last but not least, it should encourage adoption. Why? Because everything can be done in the user level, at the user level, which means it's not dependent on the kernel. So you can build your application and have it support QUIC. So it should make it very easy and more flexible for people to build applications that support QUIC. One of the examples is web browsers. Web browsers do not have to have QUIC in the kernel to be able to use it. And that's another big benefit. Now, there were some critiques when QUIC was first shown to the masses, let's say. There was a lot of fun and fear going around. The firewalls were blind and you couldn't do TLS inspection anymore. It would be very bad for your application visibility and the control of the data that goes in and out. It would break your DDoS protection or detection because it's UDP and not TCP. And then there was the people that were worried about the logging and the reporting, so you couldn't find out what people were actually searching for on your network or what YouTube's things they were looking at. But basically, all those are a lot of FUD. And let's say that the security and monitoring industry has caught up, has adapted their appliances and software, and they should be able to handle it. And if they are not, well, they should get a move on, basically. But let's get that out of the way. It is not as bad as you think it is. There are some challenges, of course. So some people say, oh, QUIC is faster, so they want their application to be 3 times faster. Well, that's not really the purpose of QUIC, to make your application 3 times faster. It has to do with what's happening on the network, on the backbone, also at the provider level. If you have better TLS, faster TLS, handshakes, that's important to a provider, less important to one individual user. Some people also say, well, I don't really need QUIC. I don't have all these issues you mentioned. That's fine. That's the me versus we discussion. We're talking in general on congested, less optimal networks. You will most definitely have a benefit of using QUIC. Then there are some people that say, yeah, but QUIC doesn't do 25 gig or higher yet. Well, basically, do you need it for the use cases you have today? Probably not. And the other thing, of course, Microsoft's engineers are hard at work, and I've put a link there. It's over here. I'm going to use my laser pointer here. It's over here. Have a look. They're working very hard, and they're making it more performant every day, so to speak. We've already discussed the inertia and the FUD, but one of the things is that some people might say, look, I don't need the benefits of QUIC, so I won't build it. That's true. That's everybody will have to decide that for themselves. Another thing will be with inertia. If you look at all the endpoints in the world and IoT, I hope they're all on TLS 1.2, but I have little hope they will be on TLS 1.3 in the next 6 to 12 months. So that's another thing. The security appliance, FUD and scare, we've already covered that. QUIC is not just for the internet. It is coming to SMB, what we will talk about today, but also to DNS, SIP, WebSockets, you name it. Other things are UDP, that not all internet routing and appliances are ready for this. If you look at NAT and EMCP, the 4-tuple TCP/IP load balancing versus the connection ID from QUIC. So they will have to do some engineering to make all that work. Then there's the discussion about, look, TCP/IP is so mature, it has all these offloads and performance optimizations. Well, again, the same link to Microsoft, what they are doing today to give you offloads, receive side scaling with UDP, etc., etc. They are hard at work to close that gap. Now my laser pointer, yeah, yes. So that was quick in a very rapid manner because I have to make up for some time, I think. That's something I need to watch out here. Why SMB over QUIC? Well, there's 2 real reasons, and this is the Microsoft part of the presentation. What drives as a Microsoft to go for this? Well, on the one hand, there's the focus on the user needs, right? First of all, it's UDP over 443. So it's not TCP 445 for SMB. That's very important, and we'll talk about that later. You will have no head of line blocking, very interesting. Easy network changes, stable connections, we've talked about that. And last but not least, a transparent user experience. So people can just access a file share when they're working from home or when they're working on the road, as if they were in the corporate office. That's no VPN required. Kind of cool. It's the same experience everywhere. On the other hand, is the engineering needs, I would say, reducing those TLS overheads, right? Cloud scale is there, it exists. All the data transfer overhead TCP has, you could avoid that with UDP. Maybe not very important to the individual user, but most certainly to, let's say, the cloud hyperscalers. Then there's the easy development and adoption. We said it's all in user space, it's not in the kernel, so that is very helpful. And of course, that UDP 443 is not just a client thingy or user need, it's very firewall friendly. So Most of the time, TCP 445 is blocked on firewalls or by ISPs for security reasons, and that gives some issues if you want to use that over the internet. So that's the main reason there. So the use cases for those end user needs, well, the telecommuters, your road warriors, your work from home, work from anywhere, no VPN required, and a lot less or no ISP and firewall issues. End users, your customers, they like that. Now, the use cases from the corporate world and corporate employees are maybe a bit different, but port 4.5 often or most oftenly blocked. So you can't even map to your Azure file shares. So what if they give you SMB QUIC on Azure file share in the future? Well, here we go. That's one issue less to worry about. HTTPS 443 is normally used on the corporate, allowed, I mean, on the corporate firewall. So if you add UDP 443, you're in business. The thing there is, a couple of years ago, there was this thought on the internet, and everyone was saying, oh, block UDP 443 on your firewalls because QUIC is coming and you will lose all insight into the security of your data. So please don't do that. Get with the program, be modern, evolve, and just join the club. So SMB over QUIC, I've made a little drawing. How does it work? You've got a user. He wants to open an Excel file. That Excel file, I'm going to use my pointer again. Hang on. He wants to access the Excel file on the file share, and then he will find that file share on the name based on DNS. So what happens? His SMB client is going to look, hey, what can I use? TCP or RDMA, and maybe last in the track, QUIC. So he starts with TCP and RDMA. And if that doesn't work, you can always try QUIC. Now, on the corporate network, unless you force it, it will go for TCP IP or RDMA or applicable. If you have RDMA to open Excel files, I really applaud you. I commend you. I love it. But normally it will be TCP IP in that case. Now, if you are not on the corporate network, what will happen? Well, normally 445 will not be available on the firewall, but you have UDP 443 open, so TCP and RDMA will fail. QUIC is also tried last because it gives a little head start to TCP, but then if you've configured it on your firewall, you will get to your file share. Now, I've drawn a KDC proxy here, and we'll talk about that later, because we want to have the benefits of Kerberos wherever we are in the world. So that's not unimportant. Now, it's very nice and very important to remember that during all this, whether it's internal or external access to that file share, that everything is encrypted by default. Because why? QUIC uses TLS 1.3 all of the time. So it's almost as if you are working in a VPN or in an IPsec tunnel, right? So there is complete security. By definition, QUIC will protect you from man-in-the-middle attacks. It will protect you from sniffing and all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of cool. Also, don't forget that end user, wherever he is, in the corporate office, on the road, at home, he has the same experience. That's all very nice, because training of users, as we all know, we would all like it to be very easy and that users always get every technology in 2 seconds and they are good to go. Unfortunately, that's not true. And VPNs really do add to people their frustrations and the things they need to take care of. So let's get rid of my pointer here and go to the next slide. Basically, I think you will see that what I've mentioned is discussed here. Oh yeah, what I should mention, but I've said that's in the picture. It will always try TCP and RDMA first, and then QUIC, because it gives it a little head start. So that's kind of cool. Now, if you've set it up and you want to use it, well, you need to do a couple of things, of course. First, you need to get a certificate, and NetPile has made a video. It's on YouTube. The link is on the slide. If you watch that video, you are good to go. It is a perfect video as far as the explanation goes. But I made a little synthesis of it for you here. So I'm going to show you what I did in my lab. I have my certificate authority, and I duplicated my computer template. I modernized the compatibility settings to the best I could. And then I gave it a nice name, and I said I would publish it in Active Directory. Then the purpose in my request handling is signature, and then in cryptography, I go for modern key storage provider, a modern algorithm, and of course, SHA-256 and nothing lower, because you are going to be dealing with TLS 1.3. You do not want to use a certificate of the Stone Age, so to speak. Make sure that your application policies and extensions are set to server authentication. For enrollment with Active Directory, you want authenticated users to have read writes. And last but not least, we of course want to have some say in what goes into the certificates. So we say that we want to supply extra information, and this will be important for the subject alternate names we are going to use. When you've done that, you just publish that certificate to be issued, and then you can actually use it. So on your file share server, so now we're on the file share server, our Windows Server 2022 Azure Edition, we are going to request a new certificate in Active Directory enrollment policy. We're going to find our SMB over QUIC certificate, and we're going to fill out the name. I'm going to give it a common name, but I'm also going to add some subject alternate names. Now, I went a bit overboard here because I'm playing in the lab. You shouldn't have to add so many, but that's me going overboard, being an enthusiastic MVP as I am, and being in love with new technologies. So once you've done that, your certificate has been created and is available on your file server. Basically, you're now good to go. So now you want to configure SMB over QUIC, and configuring SMB over QUIC is actually, well, ridiculously easy. I was expecting a lot of hard work, and then they said use WAC or PowerShell. But WAC is like, it's as easy as it gets. So on WAC, you know, if you have WAC, and thanks to my two colleagues before me, they've talked about WAC before, so I don't need to do that. You've got some extensions there, and the file sharing extension, once you've installed it or you have it, make sure this is on the latest of the greatest. So just make sure the file sharing extension is updated. Then you go to settings on your file server. So you connect to your file server, you go to settings, and you go to file shares. What you will see is that SMB1 isn't installed by default. Keep it that way. That's how we like it. But down below here, there is this cute little thing, file sharing across the internet with SMB over QUIC. And then you can click this to configure it. And what you will see is you will see the certificates on your server. Just grab the one that we just requested from our certificate authority. You could of course also use a third-party certificate provider. You select the names, the subject alternate names you want to use. So I've selected them all again because I'm going overboard in the lab. And you have the option to enable SMB encryption, which is actually not necessary because everything, as we mentioned, thanks to TLS 1.3 in QUIC is already encrypted, and you don't want to use named pipes because named pipes have some security concerns related to it. But that's actually it. You click enable, and pronto, as you can see below, that's it. You're done. You have configured SMB over QUIC. And for some reason, I'm going to stick with you for a bit longer because I'm not yet going to end my session. No, because we have a lot more to talk about, of course. But that's how easy it is to set up. I've created some PowerShell in the lab to play with. It's on the slides just for your reference, so you know how to do it with PowerShell and how to remove it with PowerShell. But WAC is your tool of choice, probably, unless you want to do this for many, many servers and you need some automation. Now we've set it up. Now we want to use it. So what you could do with NetUse or with PowerShell, if you go to a file share, you can actually say that the transport has to be QUIC. So that's cool. Then you force QUIC. That's quite easy, but you can also play with the client configuration and the SMB server configuration. So on the client side, you can say skip the certificate check. It's actually nice to play in the lab to see if you have any issues, but in production, of course, this is not a good idea. But you can also say force SMB encryption over QUIC. I want it to be enforced. So that's an option you have to configure it to be used. On the server side, you've got a couple more. You can disable the SMB encryption on the secure connection. That's always set to true because otherwise you double encrypt. Maybe you have a policy that requires you to do so, but rest assured, when you're using QUIC, everything is encrypted. They also by default restrict the named pipe access. That's the same as you have seen in WAC. And of course, you can choose to disable SMB over QUIC, but normally enable SMB QUIC is set to true. So these are the 3 defaults. So that's the amount of control you have there. But of course, last but not least, what you can also do is go to your Windows firewall and block TCP 445, and nothing will happen anymore unless you have QUIC configured. And as you can see on the Windows firewall, you actually have this new rule in 2022, file and printer sharing SMB QUIC in. You can enable that. I play around with a OpenSense firewall in the lab just to make sure I can emulate an internet client later. So this only has access to DNS and the file server over UDP 443, and also actually a KDC proxy, which we will discuss later. So this is also a way to manage whether you have to go over QUIC or not. Now, we're done, I said. You can use QUIC now, but the problem is you will see this nice pop-up that wants you to authenticate. Why? Because you're actually falling back to NTLM v2. Remember, in an internet scenario, you do not have line of sight to domain controller. So NTLM v2 is a fallback scenario, as it is for so many other use cases. But this is 2021, and we try to convince people not to use NTLM, even if it is v2. We want Kerberos. But for Kerberos, we need line of sight to a domain controller. And putting your domain controller on the internet is a very, very, very bad idea, just as bad as putting your file server on the internet. Hence, we have SMB over QUIC, right? So we have a KDC proxy for that. And a KDC proxy is actually a pretty cool thing to have. But we will discuss that later. This is a little screenshot. This is me going over the internet, accessing my file, and showing you a screenshot of Wireshark showing you that we are using QUIC as a protocol. Now, why is that KDC proxy so important? Well, let's go recap a little bit. The key distribution center in Kerberos, basically it's a service that runs on every domain controller, and it provides 2 services to your clients, right? It provides authentication, the AS in the figure, and the ticket granting service. So what you can do is, well, once you've authenticated, you get a ticket granting ticket, and that you can use to request a ticket and a session key to access a resource. And if you are authorized to access that resource, you can actually get to it. An app server or file server, it doesn't really matter. And you authenticate mutually. So that's the nice thing about Kerberos. But again, you need line of sight to domain controllers to do that. But putting domain controllers on the internet is a big no-no. But what if we have a KDC proxy? This is a domain member, so it can talk to the domain controller. You can firewall it as much as you want, but it does not expose your domain controllers to the internet, just a proxy. The proxy goes over HTTPS port 443, typically for the firewall HTTPS. And everything you do here as a road warrior telecommuter actually now has line of sight to a domain controller over that proxy. For this to work, of course, you need to have your certificates published and your certificate revocation list available to be checked, because otherwise, at a given moment, it will fail. Usually, you will find this on every server you install. Basically, it is supported for direct access and remote desktop services. Microsoft mentions this in their documentation about SMB over QUIC, but there is no real wholesale support statement yet that it is supported, but I guess it is. But it would be nice to have a list of services where this is supported and where if you use this, you won't get into trouble, at least when you need support. Now, setting this up is something they were going to put into WAC, but they've hit some delays, so it is not there yet at the last time I checked. But they keep telling me it's coming. So if you want to configure it, I'm not going to read it all out, but basically you are going to create a URL ACL for the endpoint or for your KDC proxy with the correct user, the network service. You do that via NetSH. Then in the registry or via PowerShell, you are going to disable smart cards in Windows Hello because you're going to use a password, and you will allow a password. So you will not be using certificates for authentication. So that's these 2 that you are doing. Once you've done that, you are going to tie your certificate that you have created for QUIC to that endpoint. So what you want to do is you grab the certificate, the name, the port, and you grab the thumbprint of the certificate. You put that in a netsh command, and you tie it to the port and the name. So in our case, it's by QUIC edge datawise-tech.com with port 443. You can also do it via PowerShell, but PowerShell doesn't allow you to query it. So PowerShell in this case seems incomplete to me. So for this purpose, I still like to use netsh, even if Microsoft keeps saying it's depreciated and you should stop using it. I keep finding scenarios where this is just the only tool you can really use to do whatever you want to do. So that's a bit of a feedback to Microsoft. Please, if you want us to stop using that tool, make the replacements feature complete. Last but not least, we will add your some names as a computer alias with netdom. This is way better than DNS CNAMEs because this is compatible with Kerberos, right? And remember, we are doing this to have Kerberos authentication over the internet. Then the last thing you need to do is set the startup type of that service to automatic and start the service. And then you're done. On the server side. Now, for the clients, you need to tell that client that if it cannot find a domain controller, it can try a KDC proxy. So you have a group policy for that where you can configure the domain name of your internal domain, and you can map that to the name of your externally visible KDC proxy. This is nice if you have group policy and people come into the corporate office, but we've also had this little pandemic where people didn't come into the office anymore. So you have other options, registry edits, as long as you have some way of managing those devices. Even if it's not group policies, you can push those registry keys and configure it here as well in the registry. So you can enable it and add the KDC proxies. I have only one in the lab, but you can have multiple for redundancy if you want to do that. Last but not least, I've said if you want to use a KDC proxy, you have to have that certificate revocation list available to be checked. You can disable this for troubleshooting and for testing in the lab. That's all fine. In production, never do this. Do mind, I've noticed that if you do not have it available, your KDC proxy and your SMB QUIC over in the lab, it will fail. So it doesn't fail immediately because there's a lot of caching going on with certificate revocation lists. But sooner or later, if you wait long enough, if you come back a day later, once all the caching has worked out, you will see that it fails. I know there's all kinds of tricks to purge the cache and to delete files and to try and reproduce it. But in the end, I've noticed that just acting as if it's real world and giving it some time, you will notice that you really need that CRL to be available. Now, the also cool is once you have this working, how do you know the KDC proxy is being used? Other than thinking, look, I'm on the internet, this shouldn't work. Well, on the KDC proxy, there is this log that will tell you that it's being used. And on the clients, you can actually see that you are getting your tickets via the KDC proxy instead of just the name of the domain controller. And last but not least, and this is a bonus, the bonus is once you've set up that KDC proxy, users can actually change their password because that's one of the services that the KDC proxy provides. You can change your password while you are on the internet of your domain account, which in, let's say, Corona and working from home times is very handy. You don't even have to have AD Connect with synced users where password write back is enabled or something. No, this just works with the KDC proxy. So that was me in a whirlwind talking about everything I could throw at you in regards to SMB over QUIC. But that was a lot of talking, and I'm pretty sure you want to see something. So let's do that. Okay, so let me get this one out of the way. And let's go to our virtual machine where I have WAC set up. So as I said, you install the latest version of WAC. Normally that updates very nicely for you if you let it. And then you go to extensions. And the thing that you need to do is you need to go to file sharing and make sure that you always install the latest of the greatest of that extension. Make sure that's there. What you do then is in QUIC, you connect to your file server. And as a file sharing, as you can see, you will see some file shares here. So these exist on the server. Actually, they are over here somewhere. Oh no, sorry, I need to go to file server, of course. So this is on the file server. But where we really want to go is to go to settings, and you go to file shares. It's very nice. It's the first one in the row, so that's easy. As I said, SMB1 not installed. You leave everything on the default normally, and you're going to configure SMB over QUIC. And it's really that easy. I mean, you select the certificate you need, you select the subject alternate names or all of them that you want to add. With advanced settings, you can choose to enable or disable SMB encryption on top of QUIC encryption. You can allow name pipes if you want to, but just clicking enable here, and that's it. It's all set up. From this moment on, internally, and if your firewall rules are set up correctly, you can actually use SMB QUIC over the internet, albeit it will fall back to NTLM v2. Okay, so it will prompt you for a password. So that's the WAC part of things. Now let's take a look at our server. So I've put the KDC proxy server on the same host as my file share in the lab. You don't need to do that. You can have also multiple of those KDC proxy servers. Actually, if you go and look at services, and let's do that. Let's go. Okay, these are our file shares on the server, but I wanted to show you the services. I invite you to take a random server in your lab and find the KDC proxy server. You will see that it is stopped and it is disabled. And then all the steps we went through on the PowerShell and with the NetShell and with the registry keys to configure it, that's what you'll need to do to set it up. And it's a bit tedious. Actually, this is the most difficult part of the exercise. But again, Microsoft said they were going to put this into WAC, so they should make it as easy as possible for you to set this up as well. And then last but not least, of course, I said there was a place to see where the KDC proxy is being used. As you can see, this morning and on some other days, I logged in to this machine and it found the KDC. So by the KDC proxy, it found the KDC server, a domain controller. And that's what's going on here. And we'll make a connection with our client, and we'll come back to this to show you. And I'll also start my network trace. So there we go. Let's capture some package. I'm filtering on QUIC traffic, so we don't get too much overhead from other traffic. And then we go to the client. So the client has to be Windows Server 2022, or it has to be Windows 10. I don't know the exact build number where it is supported from, but also in Windows 11, it should be supported by default. So again, here we are going to start a network trace. I logged in this morning and I checked my Kerberos tickets. And what you will see is I have two, right? And as you can see, they come really from the KDC proxy. Because why? Because this machine is now on a subnet in my lab where it has only access to a DNS server, to the internet, to the certificate revocation list, and over UDP 443 to my Windows 2022 Azure Edition file server where I have SMB over QUIC configured. And of course, on this client, I actually did configure either in the group policies, and we can go there. Let's go, system. Kerberos. Here we go, specify the KDC proxies. So as you can see, I have set up one. This is actually my KDC edge server that I map to the internal domain name I have. Now, the DNS thing is, of course, something that you will have to work out for yourself. Do you have publicly routable DNS names internal, or are you using a non-routable domain name internally? So the DNS names have to be available on the internet for this to work. So that's something you need to consider. And as said, you can also configure this in the registry. As you can see, here is the registry. So you enable your KDC proxy by creating this value, setting it to 1, and then you fill out your proxy server as you actually did in the group policy on your domain controllers if you wanted to. So those are the two ways to get your clients configured to use a KDC proxy. Now, the thing to remember is that the KDC proxy will be used when everything else fails. So normally it will try to find a domain controller. That will take some time because it will say, look, I'm trying, it's not going anywhere. Let me see. Hey, do I have a KDC proxy configured? Hey, yes, I do. Let's try that one. And that's when this kicks in. So without further ado, we've got our network traces running. Let's go to our Explorer and let's go to a file share. And if we already look here, QUIC protocol is already in action both on the server and on the client. So this is the first time we're connecting, so it's going to have to try a bit to find a domain controller, come to the conclusion there is none. It finds the KDC proxy, and I am opening my documents over the internet without line of sight to domain controller. But did you see a password prompt? No, you did, because I logged into my client. That login went via the KDC proxy, so I don't have to use NTLM v2 here to authenticate to the server, which will then authenticate me to the file shares. So that's basically all this neat stuff in action. And now, last but not least, let's run this one again. And look at here. We have, next to the Kerberos tickets we got from logging into the system, we now also see that we've got our tickets to go to the CIFS, right? CIFS, I know I don't like the name CIFS. I want to use SMB everywhere, but this is a dead giveaway that you are using your KDC proxy. It says so actually over here. And these entries only became visible when we went to the file share. So you can edit these documents, you can copy them, you can do whatever you want. Whether it is internal or external, there's no VPN involved. It's very transparent for the user. And that's kind of cool to see in action. Now, let's go back to our KDC proxy. And let's refresh this. And let's change this over. We've got the newest one on top. And you can look at the clock. This is me using the KDC proxy when I was navigating to the file share. And basically, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody else, this is SMB over QUIC in action in the lab. It's not RTM yet. I think that's forthcoming. I think it won't be too long before that goes RTM or GA, but you need to ask Microsoft. I do not work for them, and they don't tell me all of their secrets for some reason. Secondly, is this available on Azure file shares yet? Not to the best of my knowledge. I'm pretty sure they're working on it, but again, ask somebody who's very nice at Microsoft and they will probably answer you, yes, it's coming. But as with many things, I can't give you an exact date and they probably can't either, but I'm pretty sure it won't be long because I've talked about this with a couple of people. And they really want this. For use cases I even hadn't imagined yet, but it's more than just the end user who is a road warrior. There's a lot of people who need access to Azure file shares that have issues with TCP 445 not being possible for them. And if they can use this to send data to a file share in Azure from machines, from software that can't handle any other method of uploading files, this would be a godsend for them. And yeah, that's basically it. So I'm leaving lots of times for questions and answers. I went a bit fast because I was worried that I wouldn't make it because I lost some time. But again, I'm a bit early, so let's discuss this. Let's open it up to discussion.
Yeah, first, Didier, thank you so much for this deep technical session. And I know all your sessions are very deep. So we have a few questions. And I, excuse me, I can add a bit more. Yes, I'm unmuted. Last time I was muted. So one question is, any info about using SMB over QUIC from a Mac or Linux Samba support?
Well, I would say that should be easy, right? Because the development is not dependent on the kernel. So anybody working on an SMB client, I'm like, have a ball. Nobody is stopping them. However, Apple doesn't talk to me and divulges their secrets to me. But I'm pretty sure that they are implementing QUIC for their browser. So why not? Again, Samba and SMB3, they are pretty, let's say, well on board with everything else that's happening with SMB, RDMA, etc., SMB3. So I think this is something that is on their roadmap as well. But again, unfortunately, I don't have dates.
Okay. Then, as far as I understand, QUIC is in the moment only available in the, how you call it, Windows Server 2022
Azure Edition.
Data Center Azure Edition, right?
Yes. The thing is, you can run this in Azure, the lab, or you can run the lab on Azure Stack HCI. That is for the moment. I'm not privy to any plans of Microsoft opening this up to Windows Server, let's say Windows Server 2022, without the Azure Edition in the name. I would love for them to do that. And again, on the client, of course, the support there is there in Windows 10, Dev Editions, or even the latest real release. I'm not really sure, and Windows 11. So, but I would love to see some of these features light being lit up in every version of Windows Server 2022. But for the moment, I mean, this is Azure Stack HCI days, right? So this is an Azure Stack HCI, server edition. It matches the description.
That's true, but we also talk about storage spaces direct a bit, and
absolutely, I hear you. I'm one of the people asking for them to do that.
Yeah,
but again, for some reason, they don't always immediately say yes, Didier. When you ask it, we'll do that immediately as soon as possible.
I know that feeling, Didier.
Yeah.
I know it.
You know that feeling?
Well.
Okay, yeah.
So if you want to play around with this QUIC over SMB thingy or MS QUIC, in the moment there's only the chance to deploy in Azure.
Yeah, if you go to Azure
VM.
Yeah. If in Azure you can find the VM with Azure Edition, and you can install it, deploy it, and you can build your lab completely in Azure. You can also do what I did. You grab the VM, you download it, and you put it on Azure Stack HCI if they have that running. So that's options you have. You can also maybe use another hypervisor, but I'm not sure if that will work or if that's supported or legal. But I mean, try and play around and see where you can get.
I'm pretty sure on Hyper-V and storage spaces direct Hyper-V it will work. Legal is something else, but maybe that's also a reason why not too many people know about it, because it's only available in Azure.
Exactly. That's one of the drawbacks of having it only available on Azure Stack HCI or in Azure. It builds, for better or worse, it's a bit of a barrier to entry, right?
Yeah.
So if you want as many people as possible to start playing with it, it isn't as accessible as if it would be in Windows Server 22 all editions.
Mm-hmm.
Because let's face it, as a data center edition for a file server, well, normally we use standard for that. Very rarely.
Didier,
Yeah.
coming back to this discussion about in Windows Server 2022 or not, you mentioned, yes, this is Azure Stack HCI days, and there we can use Azure Edition, but I think Azure Edition is in preview actually, correct? So it's
it is this. So SMB over QUIC is not GA yet because it is not because Azure Edition has not GA'd yet. Yes, that's true. So that's forthcoming. I mentioned that during the presentation, but as I'm going to repeat myself again, I do not have a date, but I think it won't be very long before it goes GA. Shouldn't be too long, I think.
Okay. And regarding the question, is it in Windows Server or will it in Windows Server?
Well,
I think
the thing is, if you go to Windows Server and you open up WAC and you try to configure it there, last time I tried, which was a while back, I couldn't see it. Right, but if you go to PowerShell and you start, let me grab my, let me open up my. Is it open already somewhere? Yeah, here. So if you go to PowerShell and we've got this new SMB server certificate mapping, you will find this on Windows Server 2022, the normal versions, standards, data center, non-Azure Edition. It's there. When I tried it first, it just didn't work. And then I kept mailing and nagging Net pile. Net, when we lit up. Net, when I play with this. Net, I think this is awesome. Net, when can I play with it? And he probably went crazy. And then one day Azure Edition became available for evaluation, and then I actually jumped on it, and it was very late at night, all of a sudden. But I got it to work.
Yeah. But regarding this Windows Server thing, in Windows Server we have a release cycle of 2 to 3 years. So this means if it will be there, then maybe in some next version, but not in Windows Server.
I don't know. Look, this is in there, right? Yeah. This is in there. It's all in there. So I'm like, maybe they just need to enable it if they want to. I don't know. But again, I'm not Microsoft. I cannot talk for Microsoft. I can only say, awesome job, well done, very useful. I like it. I'm a geek. I'm an MVP. I like playing with this stuff. I see use cases for this. I have other people asking me about this. I'm going to give a presentation for some IT companies who have customers that would benefit from this. I'll do it on some user groups, the presentation, and show them how to do it. But again, I would hope so. I would like to see it happen, but I don't know.
Okay, I think we have one question in the chat we didn't answer till now. Without media available, how can we deploy Windows Server 2022 Data Center Azure Edition on top of Azure Stack HCI? Did we take this already?
Well, I actually said it. You go to Azure, you deploy VM, you shut it down, you download the VHD, and well, pronto, you have your VHDX to build your lab from, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically what you saw, my file server and my client, they're actually both Azure 2022 Azure Edition that I grabbed from Azure to play with.
Yeah. So, but it's preview. So
it's
far,
preview.
So
it is not supported yet in production. No matter how much you would like to do it. And what's also a bit funky is if you start Googling for KDC proxy, you will find two use cases, right? Direct access and remote desktop services. And then there is some blog post, even from a Microsoft employee, that says, hey, we've got this really cool feature that's installed on every server. It's a KDC proxy service. It's disabled by default, blah, blah, blah. But it's awesome, and you can use it for so many use cases. However, let me focus. Even Microsoft says it is only supported for, but then again, if you start Googling for SMB over QUIC, the first thing they will tell you, you don't want to use until MV2, do you? Deploy a KDC proxy. So I'm like, okay, Microsoft, please post some documentation that this is a supported use case for use with SMB QUIC, please. Thank you. That would be nice, because you know how it goes. I blog it, I use it, you blog it, you use it, it works, but it works is different from it is supported. And a blog post, even from Microsoft, is very different from documentation that says this is a supported scenario.
Yeah, true.
As always, very important.
Okay, Didier, we have still 10 minutes up to the next session. The next one is Let's just read it, because out of my memory it's hard. Tuning hybrid cloud dreams into reality with Dell technologies. So I'm really looking forward to that, because there are also 2 MVPs presenting this session. So we can expect some deep insight into these hybrid solutions. But I want to talk with you about something we did with Storage Spaces Direct, and we were thinking if there is space on the agenda to put a session there, but fortunately we had a lot of other sessions. So Didier, I'm talking about using Storage Spaces Direct. I know that's not Azure Stack HCI, but it's very similar. And in Storage Spaces Direct, we have 2 scenarios. We have the hyper-converged scenario, like we have in Azure Stack HCI, and we have the converged scenario, so where you have a highly available scale-out file server. Do you know what I'm mentioning?
It must be about that high performance, high available backup target, the one we did. Can we mention the brand name of the service?
Yeah, we can mention the brand name. I think they are not sponsors, but we are both Veeam Vanguard. So I mentioned the name and I did the unthinkable thing. But it uses technology from Microsoft, like SMB3 and RDMA.
Yeah.
The cloning. So maybe you want to elaborate a bit about the findings of these.
Basically, a year ago, we got the opportunity to lend a bit of hardware from Lenovo.
Which is a sponsor, by the way.
Which is that was actually the name I was alluding to. So that's good. So we lent some hardware, and that was very generous of them, because actually we had 2 all-flash S2D clusters as a backup source, and then we had another S2D target with NVMe and HDDs as a backup target. And the aim was to build a highly performant backup target, but that was also highly available. So one of the things you will see in the backup world is that you can get a very good performance, and you can get a lot of capacity. But one of the things that's often missing is the high availability. And depending on the environment, this can be important. So because Veeam can back up to an SMB target and the scale-out file server, or even a general purpose file server for that matter, but in this case, of course, it was a scale-out file server because it was S2D, can be used as a backup target. And it just leverages SMB, even with RDMA, if you configure it correctly. So you offload that backup traffic also from your CPUs. And the beautiful part of it is, one, it is really high available. You can reboot a host, lose a host, blue screen a host. Your backups will maybe pause a little while for 30 seconds, but then they will continue. So that's very unique to my knowledge in the backup world, especially because you can build it with commodity hardware. But secondly, the magic of the NVMEs combined with the HDDs, with the mirror accelerated parity in S2D, you can build actually very high performant backup targets where the bulk of the storage comes from the HDDs. And that's to lower the price a bit, right? So to make it a bit more affordable.
Yeah, we were even very surprised about the findings, because we tested 3-way mirror.
Yeah.
And we tested mirror accelerated parity.
Yeah.
That's a volume where we have a part 3-way mirror and a part double parity. Yeah. And we tested double parity. Yeah. Of course, with 3-way mirror, you have the lowest amount of usable space, but it should be the fastest, right?
And it is.
With double parity, you have the most available space from out the HDDs, but it should be the slowest. And the mirror accelerated parity, you call it MAP, is something between. So it's a good, let's say a good best of both worlds. We have
the trick there, of course, is you need to tweak it a bit with the destaging from the data from the NVMe to the HDDs, that it starts early enough. and you have to size them correctly. But if you size them correctly and you don't wait until the last % of your NVMEs being still available, then you can get performance that is very, very good, way better than you can get with, let's say, standard map out of the box where you don't tweak it, or let alone with parity. So we found that, let's say, price value map configured correctly for that purpose was the way to go, because you didn't lose that much performance compared to three-way mirror, but it was so much better than parity or even, let's say, a non-optimized map. So that was really it was a very nice and fun project to do. The only thing
I have some numbers in out of my head because it was so impressive that I still remember. I don't know if you mentioned it because I had to answer some questions in the speaker chat because of the last next session, but we backupped 600 VMs, right? Yeah. And we did a full backup in 4.5 hours.
Yes,
50 terabytes, around 50 terabytes of data.
But the thing to remember here is, and this was before Gustav announced his Beat the Gustav speed challenge.
Yeah.
We do not use compression. So we actually created the virtual machines that they had all unique data. So bar for the operating system, there was 80 gigabytes in every virtual machine that was 100% unique per virtual machine, and we disabled compression. So this was always the worst possible scenario to test performance because you had no benefits from compression or whatsoever.
Exactly.
And still the speeds were very good. And you also have to remember that normally Veeam says SMB targets make sure they are very high quality hardware because you have a chance of corruption otherwise. This is a risk, even no matter how good or bad your hardware is, it's a risk that it's taken away by the witness service of a continuous available file share. That has an impact on performance. I once did that. If you can do a file share without continuous access, you lose a lot of performance due to the witness, to the continuous access. That comes at a cost. But the nice thing is you've got this bunch of NVMEs and sitting in front of those HDDs, so you can eat that cost. It doesn't matter at that point. You can just you've mitigated that drawback that you have if you use continuous access by using storage spaces direct, and that's really nice. The only thing I found very sad is I had to give the hardware back.
Yeah, we were very sad. It was, I think, 4 to 5 hours for 50 terabyte of backup, and it doesn't really matter if we use a three-way mirror or an optimized.
No, it was the difference wasn't too big. I'm seeing
maybe half an hour or so, or 30 minutes, or 5 or 10 minutes. And if you want, do you have a blog post about the white paper on your blog?
I think so. I'm looking at if I have the white paper here to look at the numbers, but I wasn't really prepared for this discussion.
I know. So if the audience is interested, we published a white paper with Veeam, and it's on my blog. One of I think the second last entry. It's hyper-v-server.de, and I hope Didier has also a link to the white paper online. Unfortunately, Veeam wants to know who you are if you download the white paper, but it's a nearly 50-page white paper with a lot of insight how to configure this. And if someone needs a high available backup target, also for other backup vendors, I think it should be also possible.
Yeah, and it's chock full of tips for S2D to optimize it to make sure you don't. Yeah.
True. And one insight, we expected maybe a 10 to 15 page white paper, and were very surprised about the 47 pages, but they didn't want to cut something out.
No, they didn't cut it down. It was interesting enough for them to publish it in total. That was fun.
Okay, Didier, I just looked at my watch. We have 1 minute to the next session. Didier,
then
thank you so much.
Stop sharing my screen and say goodbye. I hope you enjoyed it.
The others will just grab it.
Okay.
So thank you so much. And I know you are still in the chat, and I'm looking forward to the round table tomorrow with you.
Okay, I'll be there. I just accepted the invite before the session started, so
Okay.
that should be
So
good.
now